You're listening to Reach, Teach, Talk with Nat Dane.
Welcome to another episode of Reach, Teach, Talk. I am very excited about today's episode because we're going to be taking a little personal turn on this podcast today with a very heartfelt and very open conversation about individuality and about what makes all of us special, what makes all of us unique, what makes all of us add to the overall texture and the fabric of human society. And oftentimes, I live in Europe right now, and I live in London, and some of my greatest memories of living in Europe are sitting out on a plaza in rural Spain, a village of 500 people, and it's 10 o'clock at night, and it's summertime, and a lot of you will get the idea already. You're sitting out there, you're the adult, you're eating at a table, you're drinking some wine, you're just enjoying the conversations flowing among other adults, and of all different kind of ages. And in the middle of the plaza, you've got the 5 to 12-year-olds playing football, playing soccer, with abandon, boys and girls and kids of all different abilities and all different athletic abilities and all different types playing football. And it's 10 o'clock at night, and the adults are not even casting an eye to those kids. They are just on their own, and they are absolutely having the time of their lives, knowing that should anything happen, should a kid trip, or should a kid, find himself or herself in a situation that's just not, that gets the attention of any of the adults, that they would jump up and they would take care of the kid. But those kids are independent, they're learning independence, and they're surrounded by adults. And then, I don't know, let's just say, all of a sudden the kids notice out of the corner of their eye that there is a very dignified-looking older couple coming down the stairs. Let's say this dignified couple is about 90 years old, both of them, husband and wife perhaps. Definitely, let's just say they're husband and wife. Husband's wearing a flat cap, his shirt's tucked in, he's wearing a belt, he might even be wearing a tie, and the wife is looking beautiful, her hair is done, she's got the cardigan sweater, and she's walking down, maybe with a cane. And they are walking down with dignity, and their heads are held high, and their dignity is reinforced by these kids who suddenly stop playing football, and they look up and they say, "Buenas noches, señora," and "Señora and señora, buenas noches, welcome, it's nice to see you." And they return, and they say, "Buenas noches, Mateo, buenas noches, Jose, buenas noches, Susannah," and they understand that there's a connection. They know the kids, and the kids know the adults, and you've got multi-generational living, and you've got this community, a true, authentic community. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, actually. And the subtext of this podcast is about the importance of community, and community that embraces everybody, because we're living in a society, certainly in America, where, if you're of a certain age, you're in this area of the community. If you're a certain ability, you're in this area. If you're a certain ethnic type, in certain cities, you've got different areas for them. And in certain ways, that's great. You got Thai Town, Japan Town, you've got all sorts of different areas. But there's also something amazingly important about connecting with each other, connecting with people who are different, Republicans, Democrats, people of different mindsets, people of different ideas, because we need to embrace the individuality in ourselves. We need to understand and discover the special in our own needs. And today we're going to be talking specifically about special needs. And I'm the brother of an older sister who has special needs. She just turned 50, and she is thriving, and she's living independently in her own community. And I've got nieces who also have special needs, and what they bring with them is really undefinable. And this conversation today is going to focus on talking about autism, talking about special needs. But if I'm doing this right, and particularly with my amazing guest today, if I'm doing this right, we're not going to be talking about what we already know, right? We're not going to talk about 1 in 100 kids born today are autistic. We're not going to talk about, what's the cause, what's the root cause and all that stuff, because you know what? Who cares about the root cause when you've got a person in your life who has autism and who is giving you so much more in return than one would even bargain for. And I'm speaking with passion, and I'm speaking from my heart when I'm talking about what my sister has given to me growing up and in my young and also adult years with her special need. And if nothing else, it's this idea that we've all got special needs, and we've all got special traits and talents, and discovered and undiscovered. And today is going to be a little bit of a deep exploration into what makes us all special through the lens of Susannah Peace Lovell, who is a mother of a 13-year-old beautiful daughter, Arizona, and she has taken her experience raising Arizona. Oh, I just thought about that.
Yeah, right.
She just took her experience raising Arizona. Great movie. and applied them to her new consultancy group, a parent coach. She's a parent coach for parents of special needs kids. So we're gonna dive into the personal. We're gonna dive into the heart of being a parent of somebody with special needs, being somebody who is the responsible for somebody with special needs, and we're gonna look at Arizona. We're gonna talk about Arizona. We're gonna talk about also what Arizona has added, Susannah, to your life. And what I'd love to do, first of all, is just welcome you. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy to see you, Nat.
It's wonderful to see you, Susannah. This is wonderful. And, I just want to start off with basically, who is Arizona? Who is Arizona?
Mm-hmm. So Arizona, simply put, is my daughter, right? In the form of things, right? So here we are on Earth. I am a human being. I gave birth to this human being, Arizona. And so she is my daughter. She is also, to me, just this being of light. And she has, I think we always hear parents talking about their children being their greatest teacher. And that is so true with Arizona times infinity. And not only to me, but, if we're talking about community today, it's just, sort of a ripple effect through everyone else whose lives I am touching too. So Arizona is my greatest gift. I, was reflecting a little bit on my way here, knowing that I was going to be talking about her today. And it always, brings me back to the beginning of when I first found out that my daughter was different and that she would potentially have a different life trajectory than most families that I knew of. And I always love to have that, trip down memory lane because it makes me appreciate so much what is right now, which is, by the way, nothing I thought would be possible back then. So I love that reflection. And so Arizona is, this soul that decided to meet up with my soul in this lifetime. And I have been given this opportunity to guide her, to take care of her, certainly her basic life needs, but also to learn how to honor her and appreciate her and create an environment for her in which she can be wholly and completely herself. And then, as a fun side note, learning how to honor myself for exactly the same reason. So that is Arizona. My darling 13-year-old teenage daughter, in full puberty. I mean, it's just like autism and puberty is really that combination specifically. And then I'm sure I'm like premenopausal in some sort of way. So, late 40s. So it's fun times, it's fun times in our house. Single mom, right? So right. It's me and her.
Right. The broad definition of fun.
Yeah.
It's a very broad definition.
Yes.
And I'm curious because you were saying that she's 13. She's on the onset of adolescence and puberty. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you've noticed, like, I think about communication, right? Because I remember times where my sister would be growing up and she would get sick, or she would be also going through adolescence or something. And she didn't have the language. Lynn did not have the language to communicate. Like, this is what's going on in me. I'm feeling this, or I'm just grumpy because, oh man, like they don't. At least my sister doesn't express through words as much, and that was part of her autism was as definition. Is there anything you can explain about just communication? Like, is that a specific challenge as a mom with a daughter who's autistic?
Yes, and it's. I'm glad you made the I'm glad you made the distinction around communication, because my daughter happens to be verbal, and this was not always the case. So when she first started talking, she had words, and so she was able to express sort of words and phrases, but she could not communicate. So there was no receptive language ability, 0%. So if I asked her a question, even a yes or no question, she could not respond. If I said her name, she could not respond. If I, asked her if she wanted to eat, something for lunch, she couldn't, tell me yes or no or what she wanted to eat. However, when she decided that she wanted to express herself, she could. But it was really if she felt like it. And it was typically like in the other room, staring at a wall somewhere, I could hear sort of a little voice like, want chips, or something, right? And so I'm like, oh, okay. So let me go see what. So she never seeked out conversation, communication, certainly engagement of any sort of, relational talk, right? So that was sort of the big red flag in the beginning of, so how am I supposed to have a back and forth relationship with my child, who, by the way, can talk, but in a different kind of way.
Was there, let me just get clarification, was there nonverbal, like if you were to say, would you like some chips, would you, before she would go into her room, would there be sometimes any sort of like nodding or eye contact? I'm just going with, basic question here.
No.
But, so no, okay,
No.
so no response.
No response.
Right, no reciprocation, as you say. Yet it would come out perhaps later, when she goes into her room or something, and then you hear her say, want chips, right?
Uh-huh.
So it's like the timing would be different than like our conversation right now,
Correct.
which is reciprocated, right?
Correct.
How did that make you feel?
Well, this was before I realized that she was on the autism spectrum. So
How old?
So she was probably just around 2, 1.5, 2, 2.5, when she would be talking about different things throughout the day. And I just remembered thinking, she's just kind of, sort of in her own world. She's a little stubborn. She never wants to come to me when I ask her to come to me. She just, was so involved in her own thing. She was running around the house, carrying one stuffed animal to one room, then taking another stuffed animal and stuffing it into my bathroom drawer, and then taking, it was unique and different. And I didn't know really what was happening, other than I was like, oh, this is sort of interesting. But she was my first child. And actually at the time, most of my girlfriends, actually, 99% of my girlfriends didn't even have children. So I was sort of the first leader in the pack to have a child. And so I just didn't have much context around me. And I have 4 siblings. I have siblings who have multiple children. So I'm around children a lot. But when it's your own, I think it's a different sort of, you're just in it. Yeah. You're just like, how am I, okay, I got to change his diaper. I got to sleep train. I got to make sure, she doesn't catch, a cold, so I wasn't thinking so much about, I think maybe if she had never spoken, if she didn't have any words at all, that would have been sort of a red flag, certainly, at our yearly pediatric visits. Right. But she was talking. It was in a different way.
Did you feel connected to Arizona? Like at what point can you remember the first time you truly felt like you connected with Arizona?
That is a great question, Nat. I have always felt connected to Arizona. I think because I just have this sort of motherly, instinctual, sort of nurturing way about me just in life in general. And so whether I knew she was connecting back to me, that was moot. Like I just knew that I was able to connect with her. I will say, though, that there was a specific, I remember this very clearly, she was maybe 5 years old at the time, 5, and she answered a question that I posed to her, a yes or no question for the first time in her life. So we're driving back from, this early intervention sort of preschool program, therapeutic preschool program, and I asked her a question, talking to her all day. I'm like, oh, do you want to, maybe we should go to the park. Do you want to go to the park? And she said, yes. And I was like, wait.
Stop the car.
Well, I did, Nat. I pulled over because I was like, is this a fluke? Did you just happen to be just speaking at the time and saying yes? And I asked her the question again. And I said, do you want to go to the park? And she said, yes. And I was like, and then I just started throwing questions at her. I was like, you got it. And so I asked her like 20 in a row of yes or no questions. And she was like, no, yes, Yes. And I just, the water work. I mean, I just was like bawling my eyes
And was
out.
she looking at you in the eyes when you were asking those questions? Was she feeling a sense of there's something shifting here?
And no. The eye contact was not yet there, and that is actually something we still work on. Even as a 13-year-old, so that was not there. But I think she could tell that there was something happening, because all of a sudden, then we're just like back and forth, and pretty much from that day forward, so once she learns something, there's very little regression with her. So she learned it, she got it, and now, unless she's, watching YouTube or something and is like tuning me out on purpose.
Like any 13-year-old. Yeah.
Yes, she will mostly respond to me. Yes. And that is something that I really was not sure would be possible.
That's something that, so I'm inferring here that's something that you had to accept, right? When during the first 5 years, certainly, that this might be the forever reality, that you might never have that kind of, call and response communication.
Yes.
And that's got to be tough. I mean, it's tough for any of us to not have a reciprocated, right? I mean, and if it's your own daughter.
Right, because we are connected. I mean, I can't just stop being your friend, right? Yes, it was it felt a little bit thankless, to me. And but there are so many things that I thought she would never do. I thought she would never be potty trained, because that was a very long, arduous process, because it wasn't connecting for her, mind and body. So she's potty trained today. You know what I mean? But I wasn't sure that she would be, and so I had to think about, okay, so what does this look like? Yes. I don't know. I'm not sure, but we'll just try to go one step at a time.
Yes.
One day at a time. And that was very difficult.
One day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And adjusting to that mantra, one day at a time, was difficult for you? Is that what I just heard you say?
Yes. It just, every second of parenting for me was depending on the day for me now, but it certainly was just a torturous experience, because I think it was largely because I didn't know what I was doing, and there were so many unknowns, and I am just like a control freak in general. I mean, I'm a Capricorn, I'm part Asian. I can't, I'm just sort of built this way, which is no surprise that I have the daughter that I do, really. And but I just felt so helpless. I'm like, I don't even know what to do, because I don't even know what this is. I'm not sure what this is.
Was there anybody then who, and at what point, who actually was able to give you a definition of what this is?
I mean, ultimately, yes, a developmental pediatrician, a psychologist, it gave us sort of a formal diagnosis, or rather eligibility for services under the autism spectrum disorder, ASD, diagnosis. But it was really one of my sisters who called me. She's an educator. She had a few children of her own at that point, and she called me up one day, and I'm certain that she was the family representative. I'm sure everyone was talking about it, and it's a sensitive thing. That's really hard. I mean, I'm sure it was so hard for her to call me, and she said, Susannah, I've been thinking about Arizona, and I just, I'm not sure what it is, but there's something different about her. And I said, okay, well, what do you mean? What do you mean by different? And she said, well, it's just, I don't know what it is, but I just know, being around kids, there's just something different. And so I think maybe you should look into that. And so, immediately I knew that she was right, but I was also in so much fear of what does that really mean? And I said, what am I supposed to do? And she said, well, I think maybe you should start with your pediatrician. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. Sure. I didn't even think, we don't know. You don't know what you don't know, right? So I started there. I started with calling my daughter's pediatrician. And that was tough because he was like, no, she's fine. Everything's fine. There's nothing, quote, quote, wrong. I mean, she hit all her developmental milestones. She has words. She walked at 12 months. All of these things. You know, there's a checklist, right? And so she crossed all of those, things on the list, and I was left with nothing. So it took me, some time to get to the right place, but ultimately and eventually I did, mostly because I was quite tenacious about it. And I just also was driven by this internal gut feeling of mine as a mother that something was different. And I didn't know. I didn't know anything about autism, really. I didn't know anything about, I mean, I had never even known anyone growing up with a child who, I remember, a close family friend that had a child who had some difficulty with speech and language, but it was not something that we knew about growing up. And certainly in the Taiwanese culture, we just, there's barely even a word to translate autism. I had to have that conversation with that side of the family. It's very fascinating. Yeah. Anyway, all of that to say, it was a process, it was a journey, and it was not a warm and fuzzy one, Did
receiving the label for the first time of autism for Arizona, how did that make you feel?
Well, it was sort of this roundabout way to actually receive the actual ASD, autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. First, it was like, oh, well, there's sensory processing issues. Oh, there's dyspraxia. Oh, there is motor planning, deficiencies.
So it looks like they were doing the very specific, components, but not lumping it all together?
Correct.
At first?
And I think maybe because that is a difficult word to hear, and I think professionals understand that. I was told that she had autistic-like behaviors, right?
That's as gentle as you.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, what? Okay. I took her to the Westside Regional Center and had a full assessment done by a psychologist there, and that was probably the worst experience of that period of time because she was an older woman who really did not have any bedside manner, and I think I needed that really badly at that time. And I took Arizona to get assessed, and right away she looked at me. She's like, "Well, this looks a lot like autism, but you know that, right, Mom? You know that." And I was just like, "No, I mean, that's why I'm here. I don't know anything." And it was just a joyless, colorless room without any toys or color or anything. And she's just telling Arizona to do all of these things, and she's like, grab the comb, and I was like, oh, but we don't use the word comb. She's never heard the word comb. Like, she's heard the word brush, she's heard the word, so it just, she was like, yeah, she can't, nope, yeah, look at that, autism. I mean, just very, perhaps she was on the spectrum too, I don't know, and that's something I've learned to, sort of be gentle about, and in terms of people that I meet that maybe can't quite connect. But either way, it was a difficult, very, torturous, emotional process for me. And I'm actually quite happy that I am sitting here in front of you today because there were definitely periods of time where I was like, I'm so depressed that I cannot imagine moving forward with my life and being happy and having any sort of thriving relationship with my daughter, and certainly not with myself. So anyway, let me just acknowledge that right now as I'm sitting here in this room with you, because it is a, night and day for sure.
It really has been an experience, a journey, the way you're describing it, as also trying to find hope and finding hope when you were flying blind in a sense, right? I mean, this is, as you said earlier, there's not even a word for autism in Taiwanese, really. That really sums it up. And that's your extended family and how you've grown, how you've been brought up. And this idea of just feeling alone and looking, that's why I asked you before about, how did it feel to get the diagnosis, to get the label? Did that open up suddenly a new community for you? or was that a period of acceptance? And I guess my question is, Susannah from 14 years ago, Susannah today, acknowledging this journey that has been full of challenge, and that, as we know, and I think we've talked about this in the past, it's through the obstacles and the confrontations and the real dark nights of the soul that happen to all of us.
Yes.
Right? All
Yes.
of us
Yes.
at points in our lives that we either emerge flourishing, actually. And I'm not trying to bait your answer, by the way, because you might not be flourishing, but you seem like you're flourishing. Or it's you can go the other direction and wallow. And I don't mean to put the onus on the person, because life can also throw incredibly hard challenges, and wallowing is the only option, really. But you know what I'm getting at. So Susannah from 14 years ago today, how do you describe you 14 years ago? How do you describe you today?
Yes, 14 years ago, and specifically because I was so, hell-bent on becoming a mother. First of all, I mean, just my whole life I wanted to be a mother to lots of kids. And so 14 years ago, I was just starting the journey, right? I was newly married. I was, getting ready to just fill my house full of kids. And, I just had this idea that my children would be raised the way that I was raised, because I turned out just perfectly, amazingly well,
Fabulousness, right in my presence.
Right. So I was like, I learned how to behave well. I learned social skills. I learned how to, be polite. I learned how to get straight A's. I learned, all of these things. Okay, so I know how to do that. I'm going to, pass that on to my mini-me's, all my mini-me's who are going to come after me.
Flock. Yes.
Yes, I had a perfect idea of everything. And so that, that was, who I was 14 years ago, really. And because I was able to, quote, control, there's that word again, everything else in my life. If I wanted to do well in school, I studied really hard. If I wanted to make, the cheerleading team, if I wanted to play first clarinet in the, whatever, marching band, I studied, I worked hard. So I'm like, you can make things happen within, like I can do it myself. I don't really need anyone else to assist me so much. I can figure it out. If I want to get that job, I will get that job. If I want to get into the college that I want to get into the college, I will get into the college.
Because you have all the tools.
I have all the tools, right? So I just felt like it was the same with parenting. So if I need my child to do something, I will just study and learn and train my child to do the things that I need her to do. And furthermore, what society needs her to do, whatever it is, right? So I learned very quickly on that, forget about it, because, as soon as Arizona was born, she just commanded so much attention. She was a fussy child. She had loud wailing cries all day. Turns out she was allergic to, almost everything under the sun. At one point she was allergic to everything that was orange, beta carotene. So, she couldn't have like sweet potatoes and carrots. But, how did I know? All the baby food is like mashed up sweet potatoes and carrots and maybe some beets thrown in. So I was like, oh, okay. And so that was the first sort of very challenging journey for me, was realizing that I have this child with, myriad food allergies. She was covered head to toe in eczema, rashes. She was so uncomfortable. And that probably took a year and a half to figure out exactly what she was allergic to, and then slowly eliminate foods from her body. So that was my first sort of foray into, oh, this is a different kind of parenting. How am I supposed to fix it? I can't fix this, And I mean, I can certainly learn how to change her diet, but I can't fix, her inability to process certain foods, right? So that was that. And so that, sort of began the journey of, I call it my letter A journey, because all of her diagnoses to this point have all happened to start with the letter A. And, coming full circle now, I'm just like, well, A is for Arizona, Yeah, because that's the name of my memoir that have been working on for 7 years. But that's an emotional book to write. But
the world awaits that memoir, Susannah, because it's your ability to articulate and to really be open about the subtle and the nuances and the emotional, the feelings that come up with being The Mother of Arizona. I love that title, A is for Arizona. We will all watch out for that book when it comes out. And then you today. You today. And I'm asking two-part question. One is, what traits do you have in yourself today? Do you identify in yourself today that you did not exercise or strengthen until the arrival of Arizona? And then my second question is going to be, what have you done with your wisdom? And how are you paying it forward? And feel free to brag. So
Yes.
We all need to hear what Susannah's
My
doing.
wisdom, by way of, lived experience, second by second every day. What I have learned, or who I am now that's different than who I was 14 years ago, is someone who is just more sort of able to be sort of in flow in terms of releasing, as much control as I possibly can around what I want things to look like and how I want things to be. So I have to release I've had to release so many expectations for my child, but it really has been this very parallel journey, because as I have learned to fall in love with my child for exactly who she is, I've also internally, done the work like, but there's nothing broken with me either. I mean, it's really this beautiful thing. And so as I'm learning to take care of the little girl that I was, 35 years, 40 years ago, I am realizing and understanding what that, 5-year-old needed. And I'm able to apply that now toward my parenting of my specific child, who also happens to be a daughter, who also happens to be like my spitting image. It's really quite phenomenal, this sort of spiritual journey that I've been able to be on with her. And I am a completely different person in terms of just believing in, possibilities above and beyond myself. I mean, it is... Autism to me is just this, majestic and beautiful expression of diversity, and I am honored to be sort of walking this walk with my child and really being able to support and honor her in her expression, which, by the way, is not always appropriate and is not always easy, I mean, the things that come out of her mouth. I mean, I am so grateful that I'm so grateful that she can communicate with me verbally. And the words that come out of this child's mouth, you're just like, I want to cut your head off and dribble it like a basketball. You're the worst mother in the, yesterday doing homework, she was just not having it, and the things that came out of her mouth, like just darts at me. I was like, ouch. And, I've learned to respond like there's something deeper than those words, right? So it's like, okay, good to know. Let's talk about it. She's like, well, I'm just really frustrated. And, so I've learned how to give her the space to express herself, like whatever comes out of your mouth, you're not in trouble. Let's talk about it. Let's write about it. Let's sing about it. Let's draw about it. Whatever it is, let's get it out. And I did not have that outlet as a child. And I think a lot of us do not have that opportunity to fully express, right? Fully express. And so my work with her is to be able to hold that space for her in her full expression. And then also I have learned as well to equally be able to fully express myself, which is, sometimes not easy,
Express yourself to your daughter, express yourself to others as the mother of Arizona, and what her needs and your needs via her needs are, right? And this idea, this idea of space, it brings me back to the beginning of our conversation, actually, when you were talking about, would you like chips? And it was only when Arizona was in her room far away that you heard her from the other room, as she's facing the wall saying yes.
Yes.
That's space. So there's physical space, and there's also clearly you're articulating the opening, the broadening of your construct, the space in your mind, the lens you look in the world at the world has been broadened, to say the least, right? Because possibility, space and possibility, right?
Yes.
Like there are different if I don't mean to put words in your mouth, I'm trying to actually hopefully sum up what you just really were teaching us, which is your awareness of possibility has grown tremendously, like almost like anything is possible, because look at the lens through which Arizona is viewing the world. It's certainly not the lens in which you look at the world and you were brought up to look in the world. Yet, what a beautiful lens and what a beautiful world.
Yeah. Yes. Breathtakingly. So really, I mean, I am in awe, to just be in that with her. And by the way, I have also taught everyone around her to be in that with her as well. And so talk about paying it forward. I feel like that is the way I think in which I have been able to really spread, sort of awareness and acceptance around my daughter, around autism, around different. And, I was married for a while, and Arizona's father and I were divorced and separated, so it's been about 7 years now. And so during that period of time, I really leaned on my girlfriends, and I have an amazing support of, tribe around me. And so my girlfriends are all of Arizona's aunties. So they just have learned how to just be with her and respond to her and express with her and receive and, not take things personally and just like go through that process. I mean, it has been life-changing for them as well, whether they're mothers or not, So it's just the gift that keeps on going, right? We're doing a big Lunar New Year feast on Sunday with...
Happy New Year, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Year of the Rat.
Yes.
And I have just a bunch of girlfriends coming over, and we're going to do, a little sort of council ceremony and circle around just intention and all of these things. And Arizona will, be very participatory. And it's just, I just feel like I'm just living this, purposeful life. Sometimes when I'm just not even sure what I'm doing, every day, what am I doing with my life, So I'm so grateful for these experiences and for what Arizona has brought. I just feel so much more present in my life. Like I feel so grateful for the tiniest little things, I just really do not take one little tiny thing for granted, and that is how, and Arizona has shown me that, because I think without her, I would still be like, go, so overachiever, whatever, just go get her, just nonstop. And she has allowed me to take a breath,
Beautifully said. I mean, just in the incorporation of purpose as well here. I just finished a book actually by William Damon, who's of no relation to me actually, but he's a professor up at Stanford, and he has a book called The Path to Purpose. And it's a book about the importance of purpose in all of our lives. And what happens when you suddenly find yourself disconnected from your job and from your world, and you are wondering that question when you wake up in the morning, like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? Purpose is actually everything. And a gift, one of the gifts that Arizona has given you, I'm hearing, is this sense of purpose. Every day you've got this sense of purpose. I am the mother of Arizona. And yeah, I imagine every parent, would feel a sense of purpose, a similar sense of purpose. In your particular situation, you've taken this purpose and you have actually paid it forward. We'll say it again, to others, and also in a formal way. So if you can take a few moments and kind of share with listeners and viewers here, what have you done with this concretely, and how can people benefit from your wisdom, Susannah, outside of this podcast?
Sure. Yeah. So I am an advocate, right, for special needs families, but specifically I'm a life coach for special needs families, and that's sort of a broad term and comes in different modalities. But I work with families one-to-one. Really my passion, honestly, Nate, is to work with the parents, to allow them to realize that their life is not necessarily going to be put on hold, right? There is also so much availability to them in terms of, finding their own passion, their own outlet for creativity, their own outlet for expression, all of that. And I teach what I most need to learn and what I'm currently learning, which is, there is so much possibility for my child, yes, and also for me too. And so that is what I teach to the families that work with me, the parents that work with me. I actually just launched my first online course, which is all about, it's called Life Management for Special Needs Families, an ultimate resource guide for creating a thriving life. And so I talk a lot about logistical, practical hints and tips of sort of getting through this journey, but I also really tap into emotional self-care, spiritual practice in terms of really just, honoring not only our child for who they are, but also honoring ourselves for who, we are. And so, that is available. I use a platform called Teachable.com, and it's been just a great platform for me. And I'm a blogger, and I'm finishing up my memoir, right? So
A is for Arizona.
A is for Arizona. I know. Remember I was telling you about it 5 years ago? Yeah, so I, all of these things, I wrote a little handbook on my top 7 tips for self-care as a special needs parent. I have...
How can we access that handbook?
So I actually have, digital copy that is available if you email me. My website is susannahlovell.com. And so you can pretty much reach, everything you need to get. I think do I have stuff about my class up there? Yeah, well, I will.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but anyway, I just want to help everyone. I just want everyone to feel so honored and joyful that these perfectly intact souls have chosen us to be their parents. I mean, we should just really stop and take a minute and be like, wow, we were entrusted with this, how amazing is this? Your sister chose you to be, her brother. Like, really, your nieces, chose you to be their uncle. Like, how come on, like, let's just like take a minute to really let this sink in.
And I love that your work is with other parents of special needs children, particularly parents of special needs children. It focuses on how that unique parenting relationship connects with their own self-discovery. Mm-hmm. And clearly through this whole conversation is clear that what Arizona has taught you about you, mm-hmm. right? And your focus on the parents, on getting to know not just your child and their individuality, but yourself along the way. What a gift.
Yes. And I'm living it.
Living it.
So I feel like something's working because I'm the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. Like, something has got to be working, right? And I was also, the most miserable I'd ever been in my entire life, not too long ago, yes. Nat. So I really am like, okay, if I can just share a piece of the joy that I feel in my life with just somebody else, then I'm going to, climb to the highest mountaintop and, just share everything I can possibly share with everyone who is ready to receive it.
Well, Susannah Peace Lovell, sharing many pieces of your joy today's beautiful conversation. I'm gonna conclude us, unless there's anything you feel like you've left out in terms of just okay, perfect. I'm gonna leave us with 2 quotes mm-hmm. That I discovered when I was kind of preparing for our conversation. And mm-hmm. Jean Vanier, I don't know if you've heard of Jean Vanier. He just passed away about a year ago, actually. It was, I think, June of 2019, so last year. And he was French. He grew up in France, and he was a Catholic priest who noticed that the tragedy of back in the 40s, 50s, 60s in France, many kids who had special needs and were falling behind, quote unquote, were moved to institutions, right?
Yes.
Totally dehumanizing, and that's a whole other dark, scary side of how we'll also look at how we've evolved. But anyhow, mm-hmm. and partially due to Jean Vanier, who said this must stop. This is absolutely insane. Mm. You don't treat human beings as we are all creatures of God. Mm. And mm-hmm. So he started this organization called l'Arche, the Ark, or the Bridge, and what he did is he set up, and now this is in 30 countries around the world. Including the U.S. and Mexico and France, and 27 other countries, which is he set up these residential areas where adults with special needs coexist with normally functioning, I don't know how we call ourselves, but people who are not diagnosed with special needs. And they live their adult years in community, in concert with each other. And I encourage anybody to read about what Jean Vanier's done with L'Arche and the impact it's had in the human-to-human connection, and the lessons learned so much more from people like you and from me.
On both sides.
On both sides.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
dual.
Yes.
So just two quotes I'll leave us with, and just for us all to kind of ponder and meditate on after this ends. Number one is from his book called Becoming Human. To reveal someone's beauty is to reveal their value by giving them time, attention, and tenderness. To love is not just to do something for them, but to reveal to them their own uniqueness, to tell them that they are special and worthy of attention. Goes both ways.
Goes both ways. Wow.
Right?
Yes.
What you've learned through Arizona about your own uniqueness, and that you are special in your way, Susannah, and obviously the way you've shown Arizona how unique and beautiful she is. And then number two is this book that he wrote called Eruption to Hope. Quote, living in a society where simplicity has been submerged by criticism and sometimes by hypocrisy, is it not comforting to find people who can be aware and who can marvel? Their open natures are made for communion and love.
Wowzers.
Right. Right?
Yeah, amazing.
Open, broadening, just everything we talked about.
Yes. Wow.
So we'll leave it with those two quotes, and with all the wisdom and just incredible just conversation with you, Susannah, today. Thank you so much for being a guest on Reach, Teach, Talk. It's been really special having you here.
Thank you for having me, Nat.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Reach, Teach, Talk with Nat Damon. If you'd like to recommend a guest for a future episode, you can send your suggestion or questions to nat@reachacademics.com.